Welcome to RHA Insights Podcast, partnered with the London Economic Development Corporation, the lead economic development agency for London, Ontario. Go to ledc.com for more information.
All right, welcome to RHA Insights. Today I'm joined by Richard from ShiftLink. Richard, the first questions are always the easiest. Who are you and what's your company?
Nice to be here, David. Thanks for having me. My name is Richard Bicknell. I'm the co-founder of ShiftLink. Our product reduces the time, cost, and frustration that's typically associated with filling vacant shifts.
We'll get into a little bit more about that later as well. What's your background? How did you come to start the company?
I spent most of my career in media and entertainment, to be honest. I worked for Universal Studios for about 13, 14 years in the home entertainment division. Around 2010, 2011, that started blowing up. Of course, Blockbuster going Chapter 11 and HMV going the same route, Future Shop. Essentially, what you saw was a massive migration away from physical media to digital. So having left that environment, I decided to go back to school to get a master's degree and met a whole bunch of people in healthcare. And they convinced me that was a good next career for me to take. And I started working with a company called SE Health. I met my co-founder there, Julie Adams. And this is an organization that was sending clinicians into people's private homes for a variety of different reasons, about 16,000 times a day. And with a workforce of about 8,000. They had, I would say a reliable scheduling platform, but what that scheduling platform didn't do for them was when somebody called in sick or when there was a gap in the schedule. And they literally had people sitting in a room all day making phone calls, trying to find the right person for the right shift. And so, Julie and I were talking about business ideas, and it was just staring us right in the face. We knew we could come up with a tech solution that would address this, and we also realized that the problem, the pain point, was universal. It wasn't just St. Elizabeth; it was healthcare. It wasn't just healthcare. I mean, it was, you name it: fast food, restaurants, bars, security, warehousing. Anybody that has sort of casual or part-time staff, they're always going to run into this issue.
And you guys have decided to focus on healthcare first, or is that just one of the verticals that you're servicing? Yeah,
well, that was the low-hanging fruit. That was where we had our, a lot of a significant amount of professional network, and we knew that industry. Julie in particular, having worked in sort of staffing operations for a good part of her career, so we really knew that. And we were able to develop the product around the healthcare with healthcare in mind, and we were able to secure a couple of pilots, one with a small hospital in Alliston, and then we sort of started to migrate into social services as well. So, it quickly became evident to us that this was a really great fit in healthcare, and it also made us try and tighten up our value proposition and our customer focus. And so rather than having a very broad focus, we really tried to narrow in on high skilled labor. There may be some other applications out there that we will deal with lower skilled labor, bars, restaurants, fast food, transactional labor, where our focus is really on that high skill market, and also I would also say unionized as well, which we can dive into a little bit later on.
And do you think it's important for a startup to have that narrow of a focus? Like, what are the trade-offs for you guys in making that decision?
Yeah, it's a great question. I happen to think so. I think for startups, you have limited resources, you have just limited brains and hands and time, and so chasing after every shiny object can really diffuse your resources, and ultimately, I think you're not going to be successful doing that. I think that while there are other opportunities that may be lurking just over here or just over here, a very focused business plan, very focused business approach helps you gain traction, prove out your concept, start driving some revenue, and then you're able to bring on some more resources that can start to chase around the edges a little bit.
And how hard has it been for you guys to try to stay in that narrow focus? The reason I ask is I encounter a lot of founders that, like, my product can solve every problem in every market. I'm being a little facetious, but certainly I do think ShiftLink could help in other areas, non-unionized, low skill labor. But how hard has it been for you guys as founders to not pursue those opportunities and stay focused in where you think your unique strengths are?
I would say early days, it was a little harder because you saw opportunity everywhere and you were really trying to get that first customer, that first invoice sent out. We were trying to get a real world application for your service. But for us, we saw so much opportunity in the one vertical that we were in. We saw almost instant results by applying our system to that environment. We knew that we had a great story to tell in a market that really needed what we were providing. And so it wasn't that difficult. I mean, certainly there have been opportunities that have come our way that we've said, okay, let's divert some time and resources to this, see what happens. But ultimately, we've always stayed grounded on our business plan, and I guess it's just the results have been there, Dave. Right? If we were failing all the time, we would have to sort of step back and say, okay, maybe we need to pivot here, but that just wasn't the case.
That's a great segue to my next question. Is your organization growing, and if so, how do you measure that? Like, what's the most important metric of growth for you guys?
Well, it's of course it's going to be revenue. It's going to be the number of clients we're bringing on board, but we're also looking at the actual number of shifts that we're sending out, the number of notifications that we're sending, so that there's operational metrics that we're looking at. But we're still, I would say, fairly early days in terms of the product development, and there's a real, clearly defined product roadmap that we're looking at. So are we hitting our objectives along the way as far as the product development is concerned as well? So that's a big piece of our KPI is that we've got a clear vision, a clear end game for where we want our product to be year to year, and are we hitting those milestones as well?
How far out do you guys do that planning? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, 1 year?
We do have a 3-year business plan that's mostly revenue based, but we will look at our sort of operational plan year to year, and we'll also look at our software development plan over a 12-month time frame. Some of that is, I would have to say, is again resource based. We know we only have so many resources to deploy, and so we don't want to overextend those. We don't want to bite off more than we can chew, essentially. It's not about limiting ourselves. We do have stretch goals. We do push ourselves, but we also try to be realistic about what's achievable in a given year.
And then this is maybe an unfair question then if you only play 3 years out, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Where do you see the company in 5 years?
Wow. Yeah. I love these questions. Julie and I have talked about how we want to be a multi-country. Right now, we're focused we're in Canada. Our clients are all in Canada, but we want to have that expanded outside of our borders, even outside of North America. So certainly, we would like to be an international organization. We've just hired a couple of people, and I have to say that's been one of our greatest thrills and joys about this journey is creating a job opportunity for somebody else. That's been extremely gratifying. And so to have a larger organization where we perhaps have 100 people that we've been able to provide work for would be a real nice goal for us as well.
Awesome. That actually segues nicely into my next question, although you may have a different answer, but what drives you, Richard? What's your motivation? Why do you get up every morning, and what's your passion for this project?
I think originally, for both Julie and I, it was about the thrill of having our own business, charting our own path and answering to nobody, and that was certainly a driving motivation for both of us. We were really into that at first, but what has sort of developed out of our customer base, because we are right now in healthcare and have a pretty vast portfolio of social services clients, and this was I have to say, to be completely honest, this was unanticipated at the beginning, was the social impact that ShiftLink has been able to create. That the people that our clients, the people that use ShiftLink, are not there in their jobs day to day to make $1 million, Dave. And they're never going to make $1 million. They're there because they love what they do. They want to make a real difference for other human beings, for our communities, but are challenged in doing that because of operational inefficiencies. And because we've been able to inject their operation with the staffing efficiency, they've been able to spend significantly measurable amounts of time client facing or patient facing. They're because of what we're doing, they're able to make a bigger difference in the lives of people that are, some of our most vulnerable citizens, people just not having a good day or a good week or a good month, right? And we're able to make that difference. And that's, working with RH and Brian, he really challenged us on defining our why, because we really hadn't gotten there. And he helped us, through that process, and together we were able to sort of articulate our why, which is simply making a difference.
Yeah.
We want to make a difference for those on the front lines who are making a real difference, and we do that simply in everything that we can do. It's because they have a lot of complexity. They work in acute environments. They don't need anything that's challenging or difficult to learn and understand. And so that is a huge part of what drives us today is simplicity in everything.
Awesome. I love that. I mean, I'm a big fan of the start with why kind of philosophy as well, and finding that purpose. So it's great that you guys have been able to get there and articulate it. So thanks for being open on answering that question.
Yeah, no worries.
What's been the highlight of running your company so far?
It's funny because it's sort of attached to the stage that you're at. There's been different highlights and milestones along the way that, comparative to now, don't necessarily come across as big, but at the time they were. So just, launching our product, like, we had this vision, it was on a piece of paper, and all of a sudden it's real. Landing our first pilot. So having a real world organization saying, yeah, that makes sense. We want to try that, right?
Yep.
Getting our first paid client, was sending out our first invoice, which I don't mind saying it was $400.
Yep.
But for us, it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
So there's been those sort of little milestones along the way. And I mentioned one earlier is, hiring somebody, being in a position to give somebody a job. I've been out of work. I know what that feels like to be able to actually provide that opportunity for somebody. A fellow Canadian is terrific feeling.
Agreed. What's one of the biggest challenges, or where have you struggled with the company?
Yeah, resources are always a struggle. There never seems to be enough. I would say, and this continues to be a learning curve, continues to be a point of discussion we have with Brian and RH, is the sales cycle, and how to, what's the term, moving them to yes. And really sort of understanding, that you don't necessarily speed that process up from one client to another, but you want to be able to at least impact that process, and don't fall behind or don't lose an opportunity because you weren't asking the right questions, or you didn't truly understand what that person's motivations were. So that continues to be again, cards on the table, continues to be a challenge, especially because we do work in the public sector. So we're talking about public money. There is a cadence to this, and it's staying patient, staying with it, believing in our value proposition, and just continuing to learn about how to approach a new client, what questions to ask, so that we're not, we don't get brushed aside necessarily, but we also develop the relationship that we believe, again, back to our why, makes a difference. Understanding what their pain points are aside from shift filling, and talking to them about that. So, but I think that'll always be a challenge, is the sales cycle. Yeah.
I guess it's one of those things, it's there. I think anyone who, as soon as you deal with their procurement department, there's no such thing as a quick sale, and that's not a criticism of procurement because they're doing their job to
Yeah,
protect
absolutely.
public dollars. Whereas if you're in a sector, I think of Nick, who I interviewed last week. He's B2B, so you're often talking to the decision maker, which has its own challenges. There's no such thing as an easy sale, I don't think, in business.
Nope.
But it's good that you're learning about that process and mapping it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, let's get back to my questions. Where do you see Canada's innovation landscape compared to some of your competitors? You've mentioned being looking to go international. Where do you see Canada's innovation landscape in that ability to help you grow to an international organization?
Wow, great question. To this point, I think that I have some faith in Canada's ability to help us, and also I'm a little skeptical. And that may be symptomatic of spending so much time, working with public sector, is that it feels to us like we move very slowly. We're slow to change. We're slow to adopt. We're cautious about making decisions and changing the way we do things. I've met many different founders that have said to us, I stopped trying to sell in Canada and I pivoted to the States, which is disheartening.
Yeah.
Because I want to be a part of growth in Canada, but to your point about that 5-year goal, we've had serious discussions about how much, again, limited resources, limited time, like where do we go? So and as we've started to dip our toes into the investment world, we're starting to realize that Canada isn't necessarily a great place for investor dollars. It's not very easy. There's money out there, but there's a lot of roadblocks that we've already started to see. And again, talking to other founders, we've seen that as well. Whereas there's some idea, at least, again, to be cards on the table, we're not experts in the field, but we've heard and read that it's a little easier in the States, that the money's a little bit more available, that there is more of it. So I think as a nation, we need to, and this is nothing new, I think we need to be more in tune with what truly drives innovation, which are startups. We're people with ideas. And I, not to tell tales out of school, but we had a discussion just the other day with a potential investment source, and what they said was, we're going to have to turn you down because you're not asking for enough money.
Right.
And it was just, we were like, okay, that's your criteria. We understand it, but I don't understand that.
Yeah.
We've got a proven product. We've got clients. We've got revenue. We're cash positive. We're Canadian citizens. We're hiring people in Canada. Like, what other boxes do you need us to tick here? And just because we're not asking for enough money, you're going to walk away from us. It's again, that's just it seems like a silly roadblock. But so back to your question, how is Canada going to help us? I think it always, and Julie and I always say the same thing. We're going to have to help ourselves. We're going to have to tap into as many resources as we can, like RH, like some strategic partners. We're going to have to try and extend ourselves into other regions that will help us grow and have a really sustained sources of revenue, so that we can continue to invest our time in Canada, because we absolutely want to. This is our home. We know this. Again, we've proven there's lots of people we can help, so we don't want to turn our backs on that. But there are definitely roadblocks.
Kind of segues into my next question. What can we do better as an ecosystem to support entrepreneurs like you?
I think the foundation is there, Dave. I think I remember hearing about incubators and accelerators back in just before I left Universal, and there was a few of them, and now they seem to be everywhere. And how effective they are or not is another conversation. But the fact that there's this massive community that is there to support in one way or another, I think that's terrific, and that needs to continue to grow. I think that there needs to be more attention by established organizations And some do, absolutely.
Yep.
Some telecommunications companies that they have branches that work in investment, that go out and seek out startups and companies to invest in and help. There needs to be more of that. But as I said, back to what I was saying before, I think it's just, I don't know, is it just part of Canadian DNA to be more cautious and not to run as quickly and make quick decisions and stick your neck out? Maybe that'll never change. I don't know. But I think it's cultural change always has to start at the top.
Yeah.
And so it's government, it's big business that need to understand risk and believe in taking some, because that will ultimately drive more people to the entrepreneurial space, because there's help there.
Yep.
There's a chance.
Yeah, I would say based on my experience, the United States, you can get quicker sales even. That's why they'll tell you no a lot faster, but in many ways, the Canadian version is the long no. In sales, I'd rather have a quick no than a long no. So it's really that. And then I do think, one of the problems we're trying to solve with the RH Accelerator is that mid gap, where we've heard from so many founders, in many cases experienced ourselves, that you're not asking for enough money. How does that make any sense? So you want me to take an extra $500,000 or whatever in investment and sit on it? Like, it just,
right.
We feel like there is a problem that can be solved within that, and we'll see over the next year or so how we do with solving it. But that, to me, organizations like yours that need a little bit to accelerate, no pun intended, is definitely a challenge in Canada that I don't believe exists in the States in the same way.
Right. Yeah, I think it's, as you say, it's far more competitive down there, and that there's just more of an innovative spirit. And a willingness to take risks.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. We have some lightning round questions after this one, but this is the last sort of serious question, I guess.
Okay.
Is there something I should have asked you about but didn't? I always like to close with that, because sometimes there's things that people want to share that I didn't get to.
Oh boy. I guess one question I'm interested to know is, in chatting with founders about, is, are you glad you made this decision? I'm, again, don't mind saying, I'm just got into my 50s. I've got 2 kids and a mortgage. Is this the right time to be taking this risk? And it is a risk. It's a significant personal risk, a risk to my career. Are you glad you did it? I think that's a question I always like to ask people, because it's not for the faint of heart, as you well know. And I mentioned that I used to work at Universal Studios. I had a dream job, Dave. I was VP marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I had annual budgets of about $16 to $20 million. I got to tell you, it was a fantastic gig with fantastic people, great trips, events, all kinds of awesome stuff. It was a dream job that I never wanted to leave. But I am having more fun now, making a fraction of what I used to make in my corporate life.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up so energized. I go to bed energized. I just every day brings something new. Every day there's something that's exciting, and it's all mine, or it's all ours.
Yeah.
Nothing beats that for me. There's stress, but it's a different kind of stress. There's anxiety. There's a different kind of anxiety. But ultimately, man, I couldn't imagine going back to Universal. Even if Universal came calling and saying, to have your job back and a 20% raise, I would say no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the thing to me. For me, I've been doing this 20 years now. So my honest answer is, it depends on the day. Most days you'll get a yes. I was a software developer, and sometimes I think it would have made more money if I'd have stayed in the pure software development realm.
Right.
But I don't regret any of the experiences I've had being an entrepreneur. I think it's grown me in other ways that I wouldn't have had I stayed in software development. So
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Appreciate the question. I may add that to the formal list.
All right.
I have to watch the length of these things.
Sure.
All right, so these are the lightning round questions. They're simple answers that mostly just my curiosity or to validate my own likes or dislikes. So are you married, single? What's your status? I guess you mentioned your
Yeah,
family.
been married for about 23 years, and I have 2 teenage kids.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke all day. Pepsi's evil.
Yeah, unless they end up sponsoring the podcast, but so far I agree with you. Mars bars or Snickers?
Mars.
Favorite movie?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Favorite book?
Oh, a short history of nearly everything.
Favorite game or video game?
Risk.
That's a good one. Favorite vacation spot?
Oh, a cottage.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Die Hard or?
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Oh, is it a Christmas movie? Yeah, absolutely.
You're banished to an island and can take only one thing with you. No thing, not person. What is it?
Wow. If I'm being practical, I'll say like a fishing rod or a lighter. But impractically, I would say a Star Trek replicator.
That might be handy.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you didn't take a power cell to go with it, but yeah, you can assume that they'll be self-generating or solar or something, I guess.
Solar, yeah, that's right.
That level of tech. So awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Richard. I really appreciate your insights and wish you all the best with ShiftLink.
I'm a real pleasure, Dave. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Go to rhaccelerator.com for a full library, other podcasts, and to join us on RHA Online.